In today's real estate exam prep video, we're going to continue our vocabulary word series. Important words and terms you have to know for your real estate exam. Today we're going to look at numbers 66 through 74 of 300. Hey everyone, my name is Paul Vacheski and welcome to the Real Estate Classroom YouTube channel, where our mission is simple, and that's to help you pass your real estate exam the first time. And knowing your key vocabulary words goes a long way to you achieving that goal. So let's look at number 66. And every one of these words and terms we're going to discuss here in this video all evolve around zoning. And we've had numerous videos where we discussed zoning. However, here is a link to a video you might want to check out that really goes into detail, real detail, on each one of these terms and words that we're going to discuss here today. Okay, so the first one is zoning, number 66. Now remember, zoning is a police power, and we've talked about police powers in other videos. Remember, it's just the ability of the government to put limits on your rights to property that you own and put limits on how you can use that property. And it's done under the umbrella of benefiting the general public or a safety and welfare issue. So for example, we wouldn't want, zoning would prevent a Clorox factory from being right next door to a residential development. All right, so it makes sense when you think about it in those terms. Now on your screen, you have some letters and numbers. We have ROCIA and then 1 through 7. I've discussed this in previous videos when we talked about zoning, but R stands for residential, O stands for office space or office buildings, C for commercial, I for industrial, A is agriculture. Those are the most common. Now remember, a jurisdiction, a local jurisdiction such as a county or a city, they can add on to that. So they may have M for multifamily, they might have MU for mixed use. They can classify as many different types of zoning categories as they want. Now 1 through 7, that deals with the restrictive category. So for example, you might have R1, R2, R3. That stands for residential 1, residential 2, etc. So residential R1 or R1, residential 1, that classification is for single family homes. Maybe in your jurisdiction, a R2 is a duplex. R3 is a fourplex. So it just is a way to really subcategorize the ordinance requirements or the zoning requirements for a piece of property. Now let's talk about changing in zoning or changes in zoning. There's a few key terms you have to know. The first one, number 67, is what's called a special use permit. Now the key to this specific vocabulary term is special use, all right? It is very specific and restrictive to one particular thing, such as a home business that's being operated out of a single family home. So for example, maybe you have a house, it's zoned R1, which is residential 1, so you can only use it as a home. However, you decide that you want to, in the basement, maybe have a nail salon or a hair salon, or maybe a minor, I don't know, you fix widgets. So you do the right thing, you go in front of the zoning board or the city council or whatever the case may be, and you request a special use permit. So it's going to be very unique and special to that type of business. In some areas where daycare is such a problem that they have passed ordinances that if your landlord, for example, or the zoning laws have to allow a homeowner to have a small daycare within their house, but you have to get a special use permit. That would be an example. Number 68 is conditional use permit. And a conditional use permit is a use that would benefit the public, although it violates the current zoning ordinance. So let me give you an example. Maybe you have an industrial park, a big area of land where there are hundreds of employees that are working on that particular piece of property. And you got to support those employees because they're working 3 shifts. They need place, if somebody wants to go eat lunch, those type of things. So maybe a sandwich shop, Jimmy John's, they go in front of that local zoning board or that local city council and say, well, we want to put a Jimmy John's within this industrial complex because it's all zoned industrial. a sandwich shop should be commercial. So instead of totally restructuring the zoning ordinance, they just allow a conditional use permit because Jimmy John's is going to support the workers in that industrial area, providing lunch and those type of things. That's a conditional use permit. Let's talk about exclusionary zoning. Exclusionary zoning is a type of zoning, and we really see this on the outskirts of town, okay, where agricultural land is adjacent to the city or the township, and it's basically larger lots, typically 5 to 10 acres with larger homes, so the price points are much higher. Exclusionary zoning, if somebody wanted to develop some land and 5 to 10 acre parcels, then they would request exclusionary zoning. Now, opposite of exclusionary zoning is what we call inclusionary zoning, and this requires so many parcels within that development to have, properties that lower income folks can afford. We call it lower income properties that have to be included in this housing project. So if you have a 100 lot subdivision or development, because it's inclusionary zoning, you might have some price points at 300,000, some price points at 200, and then some price points at 100, and maybe even some below. It's just a way that, or I guess it's a way for a local jurisdiction, such as a city, to force a developer to include lower income properties, affordable properties for low income families. Inclusionary zoning, and they're becoming very, very popular across the United States. Number 71 is non-conforming use, and the best way to put it is it's a parcel of land that 50 years ago was in compliance with zoning laws 50 years ago, but today the zoning laws have changed and it's no longer in compliance with current zoning laws. However, it's grandfathered in. So in Omaha, where I live, if you go to South Omaha and North Omaha, where they're predominantly residential areas, you could have an entire area that's single-family homes. But on one specific corner, there is a commercial building that many years ago was a grocery store and a drugstore. So those specific parcels of property or pieces of property are zoned commercial when everything else was zoned residential 50 years ago. Let's say 5 years ago, the city, part of their master plan, went in and rezoned everything, including those two previously zoned commercial pieces of property, as residential. However, they are still currently being used as commercial. The buildings are still there. So even though their zoning is now residential, they are grandfathered in as long as that building still stands. Now, if they tear the building down, then any new building that happens on there would have to be in conformance with the new zoning. So in our example, they would have to put a single family house there. It's called grandfathering. Key term to remember. Number 72 is spot zoning. It's a type of zoning of isolated properties for activities other than those of the existing zoning requirements. So let me give you an example. Maybe you have a development that has 100 lots in there. And so the developer, now they're all, the idea is 100 lots for residential property, so R1. But the developer asked for spot zoning because the developer wants maybe, let's say, 2 lots, one to be a small apartment community, let's say of 12, and another one for commercial for a convenience store. So it's very congruent with the area's master plan for growth. It's very specific to those 2 lots. That's called spot zoning. Very specific. Number 73 is a variance. So let's say that you own a single family house, that's R1, and you have a site, as we discussed earlier, you have a small business, maybe you do nails or you do hair, and you want to put a salon downstairs in the basement. What you're going to do is go in front of the city council, the zoning board, or whoever that makes the decision in your jurisdiction, and you're going to request a variance. The variance request is the legal process for an individual owner to legally get an exemption or an exception to the current zoning ordinance requirements, and that process is known as a variance. And then number 74 is down zoning. This is when a property is rezoned to a lower use. So maybe we're going to go from R7 to R1, or we're going to go from commercial to residential. Those are examples of down zoning. That's where the usage on that property is being rezoned to a lower use. That's what we call down zoning. If you're going to continue studying vocabulary words, check out this video right here. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Click the little circle to my left. Comments and questions down below. See y'all in the next video.